How can we solve the housing crisis in Australia? We have a shortage of housing. And if you wouldn't mind reflecting for a moment on immigration. You know, both of us come from immigration environments, my family and your family, and I'm the first person to say wonderful for immigration. We love to give everybody a chance here in Australia. But what would you say about those two issues, housing supply and immigration?
See, you get Albanese, and he says, I want over 1 million houses.
1.2, he
5
said.
years, right. But that's where he stops. How is he going to do it?
Yeah.
It's not a matter of stamping a plan. That's only the first stage. Now, you take the buildings that are built now, they take 5 years, 10 years, because they're huge, and there's many stages. So you can't, you have to work out, how am I going to do it? Because there's a lot of people that want to buy. That's no problem. They have to buy. There's nowhere to live. So it's very easy. But, for instance, I give an example. I went into housing where it was prefabricated houses. I did. No, it was very good business. But then I made more money on units, so I stopped doing it. So I said, well, why don't we go now in prefabricated house? Oh, they say, the banks don't give money. Now,
To the buyer.
To the buyer. So here's now, see, it's not only the councils that are at fault. I say the banks are more at fault. APRA, more at fault.
The regulator.
See, I made mobile homes. That's the word I was looking for. Now, so the mobile homes is what I did. I bought a caravan park, and I saw these very dilapidated caravans coming to sleep the night. I said, that's not the way to do it. I will put mobile homes. And those people lived there like in the flats. They lived for many years. They were very happy there. But then I stopped. And now they won't give the money. For instance, if that would help a lot. And they don't look at ways to assist. They have their rules now. The problem with rules is they were made a long time ago. Probably they were clever once upon a time. You know, just a year ago, I had a heart attack. And I come to the doctor, and he tells me, Harry, we'll try to fix it. You might live, you might die. If you live, you might be with a wheelchair. So, what shall I do? I said, you do your best, don't worry, don't ask me. Do what you can. They fixed it within 2 hours. What happened? I was taking the medicine, which was out of date for my body. It's the same as their plans
medicine
are out of date for today's requirements. Nothing wrong with the medicine he gave me. I lived for a long time with that medicine. But then the body changed. No? What can I do? Real estate is the same. They have to face up to the new things.
Modernize.
Right.
You're saying we should modernize in Australia.
Sorry?
Modernize the rules.
Yeah. Because it changes, you see. It's very hard even for me to build these big developments, because from the time I start till the time I finish, things change. For instance, today, it's quite easy to sell bigger apartments. Because,
like bigger inside, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because old people own a house.
Yeah.
So he has no problem of money.
Yeah.
He sells his house and he buys. He doesn't want 2-bedroom unit. He wants 4-bedroom unit.
And 3 bathrooms.
Whatever. Yeah. But that's a change, you see. Now, with them, if I come and I say I have to change this or that, that's a huge problem. Huge problem. As long as they stick to the rules, then they're right. And if I stick to reality, that's irrelevant. He says that's his rules. Now, if we want to work that way, we will not succeed. I personally think that we as a nation are very clever, that we manage such a huge continent with so few people. I think we're very clever. Every time I go to surface, because there I go out into the countryside very quickly, I can't imagine it, how we manage so well. It's so huge, so big, to bring electricity, to bring water, to bring roads, to bring all this. Very clever, but you can't be half clever. You have to be clever, and you have to adjust and be clever and do whatever is necessary at the time.
Do you think they should stop immigration? Do you think we should reduce immigration number?
No, we can't. We need more immigration, because if we have no migrants, it's very, very difficult. I can't even imagine how we do it now. So I say that we will collapse, because, you see, life is so difficult in so much of the world that everybody would love to come here. Not to destroy us, they just want to come to live here. It's a good place to live. So if we want to run it, we must bring migrants. But when I talk to them about that, they say, we have problems with visas, we have problems with this. I say, yeah, I know. Now, I know better than you with visas. But we can't find reasons for not fixing it, because we must fix it, otherwise we will not run it. Now, Chinese are wonderful migrants, but if we bring many of them, they will take over. Forget about fighting. No fighting. Because they are all young. Now, we have many Australians are old. Now, they will live longer. So there you are, as one example. So we have to bring various types. Now, I like East Europeans very much, because they know how to work, and they're well educated, and they will be good. I think South Americans are good too. But we can't just depend on one lot. Of course, Chinese are the best. They have money, and they work, and they study, and they're young, and all this. But we can't depend on one type. And, I mean, if you talk about a Vietnamese or a guy from Taiwan, they're still the same Chinese. There's no difference between them. So we have to just make sure that we have all kinds.
A proper mix.
And they themselves want all kinds. If they love themselves so much to be Chinese, why did they come in the first place? Because we have a better way of life. That's why.
Yeah. So I think what you're saying is that in order to solve this housing crisis, it's not about reducing immigration. It's about getting the right mix of immigration, but it's also about making sure that everyone gets in the room somewhere together. Banks, rule makers, regulators.
Of course.
They've got to get those people in. People who make decisions about planning and governments, probably some developers as well, to tell them the reality of how this all works.
Well, the problem with developers, it's in their nature. They like to build.
Yeah.
As a group, they like to build. But where is the money? That's their problem. Mainly money. Now, why is money? Because things change in the world. Now, who could think that we would have to pre-sell?
Yeah.
I mean, he bought the land believing it would be okay. But how can he pre-sell 100 units? He can't.
Which is what the banks usually require to do.
Now they require. But we never heard of that.
Not before.
No. They pre-sell, he says. No. So that's why cottages are doing better, because cottages he only has one. The guy who builds the units must have 100.
And he might have to pre-sell 50.
To get production. I don't mean to build a few units in Double Bay.
Yeah.
That will not solve his problem. That will only use the grandmother's money. That he'll do. But and like Reserve Bank, she's very big stickler for rules, which is, I'm sure she's right. But first of all, the rules may not be even correct then. Who knows what they are? They're rules. No? But You try and shift her. You can't. She says, that's the rules. That's it. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, like that 2 to 3% inflation. She's saying unless we have inflation between 2 and 3%, I have to keep the interest rate up high. It's the rule. And I often wonder, is 2 to 3% right, or maybe 3 to 4 is better? Or why can't we just, because if 3 to 4% was the inflation rate,
would be a lot better.
Then our interest rate will come down.
Of course.
Which means it makes housing more affordable for everybody because they can now borrow some money.
That's right.
So how do you start this, Harry? Like who is it that starts this process off? Because, Albanese gets up and says, like, I'm going to talk to all the state premiers and we're all going to make a decision. We're going to build 1.2 million houses in the next 5 years. We're nowhere near it. Nowhere near it. Because at the end of the day, he doesn't build them. The premier doesn't build them. Someone like you build them, and other people, new people build them. For different to you, but let's say it's anyone else, they have to borrow money from the bank.
Yeah.
And they want to borrow money from the bank, and the bank says got to do pre-sales.
Yeah.
And then the pre-sales means you got to get people to commit.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who won't commit because they can't get, I'm not going to commit to buy something from you before you've even built it. If I got to pay you 10% now and I know I've got to pay you the balance in 2 years' time, if I can't get a loan approval, if I can't get a pre-approval from the bank. So it's a bit of it goes around one big circle.
Of course.
So where does it start? Like, who starts this conversation? Is it Matt Common from CBA, the boss of CBA? Who starts this conversation? Which leader? Who's the person? Who should it be?
Right. In my opinion, it should be the government because they can change the rules. CBA can change the part of the bank. I don't know if he wants to change, but say he does. He should change. That would help a lot. I say it's the government with their way of approving and accepting things, and then the banks. But it's together. One without the other can't do it.
So that tells me, Harry, that we won't have a solution because not everyone's been brought into the room at once. I don't think. So therefore, that tells me that the actual will of the government doesn't exist. They say things, popular, sounds good. You need to say this, Mr. Prime Minister. You need to say this, Mr. Treasurer. That's their advisor. But there's no follow through. You couldn't. If you decide to build a building, you got to follow through. You got to have all the team behind you. Brickies, everyone's got to be ready. Everyone's got to be ready.
Right.
And as soon as you say go, they go.
That's it.
Well, the government's got to be the same.
Well,
do you ever get asked has Albanese ever called you?
I went once with Rudd.
Yep.
Rudd had a meeting with his advisors, and I was there. And I look at poor Rudd. One guy says this, and the other guy says that, and the other does right. Now, and he sits there, he doesn't know. So he wanted to bring Oprah because she would bring American tourists. I said, Rudd, listen to this. Go to the airport and see how many American planes you have and how many Asian planes you have. So Oprah has no chance. They don't come here. You have to go after people that come, not the ones who don't come.